Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut, helping you cut through the noise to get straight to the insights that really count. Today, we're tackling a huge name, Alexander the Great. You hear that name, you instantly picture, well, epic conquests, military genius.
Absolutely. Unparalleled, some would say.
But here's the mission for you, listening in. How much of that image is the real Alexander, and how much is, let's say, a carefully crafted legend?
And that's the challenge, isn't it? It's fascinating, but it's complex, mostly because we don't actually have any comprehensive accounts from people who were right there with him, writing at the time.
Right. No diaries, no contemporary histories that survived whole.
Exactly. So what we do have are 5 main narratives. Think Arrian, Plutarch, Diadochi, Siculus, Quintus Curtius Rufus, and Justin. The catch, they were all writing centuries after Alexander died.
Centuries, so layers of interpretation, potential bias.
Definitely. Each had their own angle, their own reasons for writing, their own biases. We'll get into that.
Okay, so this deep dive is basically your guide to understanding Alexander critically. Not just the conqueror, but the person shaped by his time. We're talking education, politics, military tactics, that mysterious death.
We'll unpack the man, his methods, the triumphs, sure, but also the failures, and that cultural legacy he left behind, which arguably reshapes the ancient world.
All while keeping a very critical eye on those sources. Yeah.
That's the key, always questioning the narrative. So let's dive in.
All right. So this source problem you mentioned, it seems like the first big hurdle.
It really is. You have to grapple with it right from the start. We're talking accounts written sometimes hundreds of years after he died.
Like Arian, you said he's often seen as the most reliable.
Yeah, relatively speaking. But even Arian was writing in the 1st, 2nd centuries AD. It's a good 400 years after Alexander. And he tells us himself he's relying on earlier, now lost, accounts, specifically from Ptolemy.
Alexander's general, the one who later ruled Egypt.
That's the one. And also Aristobulus, a military engineer who was actually with Alexander.
Okay, so we're getting information filtered through, well, through other people's memories and potentially their agendas.
Precisely. And you have to put that in context. These weren't neutral observers writing objective history. Think about Ptolemy. He founded a dynasty in Egypt. He had a massive interest in portraying Alexander as, well, godlike, flawless. Why? To legitimize his own power, his own succession.
Makes sense. Connect yourself to divinity makes your rule seem ordained.
Exactly. And Aristobulus. He was apparently nicknamed the Flatterer even back then because he tended to, let's say, put a positive spin on things for Alexander.
So the heroic story we often get, could it be partly political propaganda?
It's a very real possibility. You, as the listener, need to constantly ask, whose story is this? Who benefits from this portrayal?
And the other sources? Plutarch, Diodorus?
They add pieces to the puzzle. Plutarch was more of a biographer, interested in moral lessons. Diodorus is sometimes less critical, but gives us unique details others omit. Curtius is very dramatic, loves good story. Justin gives a brief summary. But none of them escape that fundamental problem: the time gap and the potential for bias.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, how history gets shaped. Okay, before the legend, there was the prince. His upbringing sounds intense.
Oh, definitely. Born 356 BC in Pella. Father, King Philip II. Mother, Queen Olympias. Quite the power couple. And his education wasn't just standard royal tutoring, it was strategic, deliberate preparation for leadership.
And the tutor was Aristotle. Seriously.
For 3 years, ages 13 to 16. Can you imagine? Philosophy, medicine, morals, logic, art. The works. It was designed to create a ruler who is both intellectually sharp and militarily capable.
And wasn't he obsessed with Homer's Iliad, carrying a copy around?
Yes, apparently an annotated copy. He saw himself in Achilles, the ultimate Greek hero. This wasn't just reading, it was like forming his own heroic mission statement.
So this high-level philosophy combined with intense practical training under his father.
Exactly. Philip II was a military genius in his own right. He reformed the Macedonian army. Alexander grew up immersed in that military and political world. He wasn't just learning theory, he was acting regent at 16. At 18, he's leading a decisive cavalry charge at the Battle of Tyrrhenia. Big victory.
Wow. So that mix of Aristotle and Philip, it created someone who saw conquest as almost a philosophical quest, spreading Greek culture.
You can definitely argue that. It gave his ambition a kind of intellectual justification, at least in his own mind.
Okay, speaking of Philip, his death, Alexander's rise to power wasn't exactly smooth sailing, was it? 336 BC.
Not at all. Philip was assassinated, stabbed by his own bodyguard, Pausanias, during his daughter's wedding celebration. Very public, very dramatic.
And the motive? just a personal grudge or something more?
Well, that's where the conspiracies start. And they've never really stopped. Some ancient writers suggest personal reasons, yeah, but others pointed fingers. The Persian king, maybe? Other rival Macedonian nobles. But the big suspicion, then and now, often falls on Alexander himself, and especially his mother, Olympias.
Why them? What was their motive?
Well, Philip had recently taken a new wife, a Macedonian noblewoman named Cleopatra, and she just had a son.
Ah, a potential rival heir to Alexander.
Exactly. Olympias, Alexander's mother, had reportedly been sidelined. Her position and Alexander's claim suddenly looked less secure.
And what happened right after the assassination? Does that fuel the suspicion?
It certainly does. The actions of Alexander and Olympias look, well, let's say, highly convenient. Olympias, according to some accounts, wasted no time. She allegedly had Philip's new wife, Cleopatra, and her infant son murdered, brutally removing the competition.
And Alexander, he becomes king at 20. What does he do?
He acts decisively, ruthlessly. He eliminates other potential rivals within Macedon. Then he has to deal with rebellions in Greece that Thebes thought this was their chance to break free.
And he crushed them.
Completely. He razed Thebes to the ground. Total destruction. Except, interestingly, for the temples and the house of the poet Pindar, a stark warning to everyone else.
Okay, so he secures his throne through pretty brutal means, but then he does something clever, right? He turns this internal mess outward.
That's fearfully done. He basically controls the narrative. He blames Philip's assassination on agents of the Persian king, Darius III.
Creates a common enemy.
Precisely. It shifts the focus. Yeah. Suddenly, it's not about Macedonian infighting. It's about righteous vengeance against Persia for Philip's death and for past Persian aggressions against Greece.
So he gets his casus belli, his reason for war.
He gets his reason, and he unites the Greeks, or forces them to unite behind his campaign, turns a crisis into an opportunity. Chillingly effective, really.
Right. Let's shift to the military side, because this is where the legend really takes off. He inherited a seriously good army from Philip, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Philip had revolutionized Macedonian warfare. He created a professional, full-time, combined arms force. It wasn't just a militia called up for campaigns.
We're talking the Macedonian phalanx. They're super long pikes.
The sarissas, yeah. 13 to 21 feet long. Imagine facing a wall of those. That was the core, the heavy infantry. But it was combined arms. You had the elite heavy cavalry, the companions, the heteroi. Alexander often led these himself. Plus light infantry, archers, engineers.
And he had that signature tactic, the hammer and anvil. How did that work?
It was devastatingly effective. The phalanx acts as the anvil, this solid, immovable block that pins the enemy center, holds them in place. Then Alexander, leading his heavy cavalry, the hammer, would smash into the enemy's flank or rear, shatter their formation, break their morale.
Brutal. And he led from the front.
Always. That was key to his charisma, his soldiers' loyalty. He wasn't just directing, he was in the thick of it. He also innovated, used new cavalry formations like the wedge.
And sieges. He was good at those too. Tyre comes to mind.
Master of siegecraft. Tyre was incredible, an island fortress. He built a causeway out to it. 7 months. Gaza too. He knew breaking fortified cities was crucial. He even used siege engines like catapults, almost like field artillery at the Battle of the Jaxartes River. Very ahead of his time.
So he takes this amazing army Philip built
and elevates it. Through his own tactical brilliance, his speed, his personal leadership, it was the perfect storm, in a way.
Okay, so 334 BC, he launches the invasion of Persia, fulfilling his father's plan, but taking it way further.
Much further. First up, the Battle of the Granicus River. Defeats the local Persian governors, the satraps. Basically unlocks Asia Minor.
Then comes Issus, 333 BC, his first face-off with Darius III himself.
Right, and Alexander's outnumbered. But the battlefield is narrow, squeezed between mountains and the sea.
So the Persian numbers don't count as much.
Exactly. Alexander uses the terrain brilliantly, leads that cavalry charge, breaks the Persian left flank, and Darius flees, abandoned his army, even his family.
Huge psychological blow, surely. The great king running away.
Massive. But here's what's really interesting strategically. Alexander doesn't immediately chase Darius inland.
What does he do instead?
He makes a pivotal decision. He turns south, marches down the Mediterranean coast, Syria, Phoenicia, Egypt.
Why?
To neutralize the Persian navy. It was huge, controlled the seas. By taking all their ports like Tyre, after that epic siege, he denied the fleet its bases. Couldn't operate effectively anymore. Brilliant strategic thinking.
And then Egypt.
He takes Egypt relatively easily.
Yep.
Apparently welcomed him as a liberator from Persian rule. Founds Alexandria there in 332 BC, his most famous city.
Okay, coast secured, navy neutralized, then he goes after Darius again.
Then it's time for the final showdown. Battle of Gaugamela, 331 BC. On a wide open plain this time, where Darius thought his numbers and chariots would prevail.
But Alexander outsmarts him again.
A tactical masterclass. Feigned maneuvers, creating gaps, that famous wedge formation charge right at the center where Darius was.
And Darius flees. Again.
This time, it's decisive. Alexander is hailed as King of Asia. The Achaemenid Empire effectively collapses.
Incredible. You'd think that would be enough. King of Asia. But he kept going, didn't he? Towards India.
His ambition seems to have been limitless. Part of it was this desire, maybe fueled by Greek myths, to reach the ends of the world, the outer ocean, plus stories of India's incredible wealth.
So the Indian campaign begins 327 BC.
Yeah, and it leads to one of his toughest battles, the Hydaspes River, 326 BC, against King Porus and his war elephants.
Elephants. How did he handle those?
It was incredibly difficult, a very costly victory. He managed it partly through a surprise river crossing during a storm, showed his tactical flexibility again, but the cost was high.
And this is where things start to unravel a bit. The famous mutiny.
This is the critical turning point, yeah. His army reaches the Hyphasis River, another major river further east, and they've just had enough.
Enough of what?
Years of constant marching, fighting, tropical diseases, monsoon rains, the terrifying battle against Porus. They were thousands of miles from home, exhausted. They just refused to go any further east.
How did Alexander react? He wasn't used to being disobeyed.
Furious. Apparently, he sulked in his tent for days, trying to shame them into changing their minds. But they wouldn't budge. He was forced, finally, to turn back.
A huge moment. Shows the limits even of his charisma, his authority.
Absolutely. It reveals that even Alexander couldn't push his men beyond human endurance indefinitely. Logistics, morale, the sheer human cost. It all caught up. And the return journey was brutal too. Part of the army went back to the Gedrosia Desert. Huge losses from heat and thirst.
So this Indian campaign, it showed a different side of Alexander.
Some historians argue it showed a more dictatorial, maybe more bitter Alexander. Pushing too hard, perhaps losing touch with the realities his soldiers faced. It certainly highlighted the limits of personal will against geography and human endurance.
A sobering end to the eastward expansion. Which brings us to his own end. Just as dramatic as his life, really. Dies in Babylon, 323 BC. Only 32 years old.
Astonishingly young. And the circumstances are shrouded in mystery. Sudden illness. Lasts about 12 days.
What were the symptoms? Do we know?
Accounts mention him attending a heavy drinking banquet, then complaining of sharp pain, followed by high fever, chills, progressive weakness. Eventually, he couldn't speak or move.
And that's led to endless speculation about the cause, right? Medical theories abound.
Oh, loads. Typhoid fever fits some symptoms. Malaria was common in Babylon. West Nile virus is another possibility. There's that story about dying ravens being an omen before he fell ill, and birds carry West Nile.
I read about one really strange theory, Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Yeah, that's a fascinating one. It's an autoimmune disorder. It attacks the nerves, causes rapid muscle weakness, paralysis. It could explain the progressive decline.
And the really chilling part of that theory
is the idea of pseudothanos, false death. If he had Guillain-Barré, his breathing might have become incredibly shallow, his body paralyzed, making him appear dead while potentially still being conscious.
Horrifying. But these are all modern diagnoses, speculation really. What about the theories from the time? Poison.
That was the immediate suspicion for many, and it's never gone away. The political situation was just too convenient for some people.
Who were the main suspects?
The strongest theory usually points to Antipater. He was Alexander's regent back in Macedon, an old loyal general of Philip's, but relations had soured. Alexander was apparently planning to recall him, replace him. Antipater had motive.
And the means.
His son, Iollas, was Alexander's royal cupbearer, right there, serving him drinks. The story goes Antipater sent poison with another son, Cassander, who delivered it to Iollas.
And Cassander later had Alexander's own son killed, right? Adds to the suspicion.
It certainly does. While we can't prove poison biologically after all this time, the political motive is undeniable. His death removed a threat to Antipater and created a huge power vacuum that others rushed to fill.
Some theories mention specific poisons.
Modern researchers have looked at poisons that might match the 12-day timeline, and symptoms, things like strychnine, were ruled out as too fast. One suggestion is veratrum album, white hellebore, a plant poison that could potentially cause that kind of slow decline, muscle weakness, nausea, but again, impossible to prove.
So whether illness or poison, the result was chaos, which points to maybe his biggest failure. No clear succession plan.
His single greatest political failure, you could argue. He built this colossal empire, but it was held together entirely by his personal authority, his charisma, his military victories.
No institutions to outlast him?
Not really. No designated heir ready to step in seamlessly. The moment he died, that power vacuum just exploded.
What was the initial plan? Wasn't there something about his half-brother and unborn son?
A total fudge, really. His mentally disabled half-brother Philip III Aridaeus and Alexander's yet unborn son Alexander IV were declared joint kings. With Perdiccas, one of the generals, acting as regent, it was never going to hold.
Just too weak, too contested.
Instantly. The other powerful generals, Ptolemy, Seleucus, Antigonus, Lysimachus, Antipater, Cassander, they weren't going to accept that. The Wars of the Diadochi, the successors, began almost immediately.
So his reliance on just himself, it doomed the empire he built.
In terms of political unity, yes. It reveals a core flaw. You can't sustain something that vast on personality alone. It needs structures, institutions, a clear line of succession. Without it, it just imploded.
Decades of brutal civil war.
Exactly. And the result, total fragmentation. Alexander's political legacy wasn't a lasting empire, it was its dissolution.
Into what? What came after?
Eventually, three major Hellenistic kingdoms emerged, carved out by his warring generals. The Seleucid Empire in the east, Persia, Mesopotamia, the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, and the Achaemenid dynasty controlling Macedon and Greece.
So politically a failure, but culturally, that's a different story, isn't it? The Hellenistic period.
That's the great paradox. His political empire shattered, but the cultural impact was profound and incredibly long-lasting. That's his real enduring legacy.
How did that happen? Through the cities he founded? Like Alexandria?
Partly, yes. He founded maybe 20 cities named Alexandria and dozens more. Alexandria in Egypt became the largest city in the ancient world for a time, a cosmopolitan hub. Its library and museum were legendary centers of learning. Think Euclid, Archimedes. They worked there or were connected to it. It drew scholars from all over.
So these cities acted like seeds of Greek culture across the empire.
Exactly. And crucially, the conquest led to the spread of Greek as a common language, the coin. It became the lingua franca for trade, administration, intellectual life across this huge area, from Greece to Egypt to parts of India.
Facilitating communication and exchange of ideas.
Immense exchange. This whole process, Hellenization, wasn't just a one-way street of Greeks imposing their culture. It was a blending. Greek art, philosophy, government models mixed with local Egyptian, Persian, Indian traditions.
Starting with something new.
A whole new, vibrant, hybrid culture. You see it in Hellenistic art, more emotional, dramatic. New architectural styles like the Corinthian order gained prominence. This cultural fusion, this Hellenistic world, outlasted his empire by centuries.
And influenced Rome later on.
Absolutely. Rome inherited and absorbed much of this Hellenistic culture, spreading it even further. So, ironically, his conquests achieved a kind of cultural unity that his political empire couldn't maintain.
Fascinating. Okay, we've covered the sources, the rise, the conquest, the death, the legacy. Time to circle back to that title, the Great. How should we think about it now?
It forces you to ask, what does great mean? If it means brilliant military strategist, undefeated in battle, changed the course of history, then yes, arguably. But if you look critically, through the lens of the sources and modern ethics, it gets complicated. He was also described, even by ancient writers, as ruthless, increasingly dictatorial, paranoid, seeing himself as divine.
And the human cost, we can't ignore that.
Absolutely not. The sheer scale of death and destruction, thousands upon thousands killed in battles and sieges, entire populations enslaved or forcibly relocated, massive economic disruption. His later reign saw him executing former friends and loyal generals on flimsy charges. Paranoia took hold.
So it's that duality again. Inspiring leader, brilliant general.
And brutal conqueror, responsible for immense suffering. A vision for a unified world maybe, but one forged through absolute ruthless force. It's a legacy of both brilliance and brutality. You can't really separate them.
How does he stack up against other famous generals, like, say, Julius Caesar?
Interesting comparison. Both charismatic, led from the front. But key differences. Alexander inherited that perfected Macedonian army from Philip. Caesar largely built his legions and their loyalty himself. Tactically, Alexander relied on that hammer blow from his heavy cavalry. Caesar relied more on the discipline and engineering prowess of his Roman infantry.
And their legacies.
Alexander's empire collapsed instantly. Caesar, despite being assassinated, laid the groundwork for the Roman Empire, a political structure that lasted centuries. Very different outcomes.
What about someone like Genghis Khan? Worlds apart.
Completely different backgrounds, yeah. Alexander, prince, Aristotle's pupil. Khan rose from poverty, united nomadic tribes through sheer will and hardship. Their armies were different too. Alexander's relied on complex logistics. Khan's Mongol army was almost entirely cavalry, incredibly mobile, lived off the land. Khan also promoted based on merit, breaking tribal loyalties, whereas Alexander's command structure was still largely based on Macedonian nobility.
So what makes Alexander unique in that company?
I think it's that combination. Inheriting arguably the finest military machine of its day, Philip's combined arms army, and wielding it with unparalleled tactical genius, personal bravery, and incredible speed. He was perhaps the perfect general for that specific army at that specific moment in history, but he was definitely building on Philip's foundation.
Right. So to wrap up for our listeners, you've journeyed with us through the murky sources, Alexander's incredible rise, those world-altering conquests, the enduring mystery of his death, and the ultimate paradox of his legacy.
A shattered empire, yes, but a cultural revolution that shaped the world for centuries to come.
It really has been a deep dive, peeling back the layers of the legend.
And hopefully what stays with you is how Alexander's story forces us to think about history itself. We've seen how his image was shaped, polished, perhaps distorted by his successors for their own political gain.
Propaganda from 2,000 years ago still influencing us.
It absolutely could be. So the final thought for you to ponder is this. What does Alexander's story teach us about how history is written? How powerful narratives are constructed? And maybe, just maybe, consider which larger-than-life figures in our own time might look very different when viewed through a critical historical lens centuries from now. Something to think about.